I'll try to make quick so we can have time. Yeah, do it really different.
Assalamu alaikum. So, inshallah, we'll start the lecture. It's about Know Your Rights. Speaker Sister Stephanie Marzouk, Jazakallah khairan for coming to, uh, I mean, teach us for this very important topics, inshallah. So, she is an immigration attorney at Marzouk Law, and she is the co-founder of the Muslim Justice League. So, inshallah, again, we'll have some slides on the screen, and we'll have the translation on the WhatsApp. If you have any question, please keep it to the end. Inshallah, we'll take the question in the last maybe 10, 15 minutes. Jazakumullah khairan.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So I'm Stephanie Marzouk. Thank you so much for having me. It feels very lonely up here without a co-presenter. I'm sorry that he couldn't make it tonight. I'll do my best to give you all the information. So I am an immigration attorney with an office in Cambridge. These slides are prepared by MIRA, the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition. They're a wonderful organization. I don't work for them. Thank you. So they've graciously provided these slides, and they do have a lot of wonderful information. So I encourage you to reach out to them as well. And their website has loads of information on it. It's pretty great. So just a few things before we get started. I am an attorney. I'm here to give general information, not legal advice. So we will, inshallah, have question and answer at the end. Please keep those questions and answers general. I really don't want anyone to share information about their personal situation. This is being recorded. I think it may be broadcast on social media as well. So just if there is anything personal to you, let's keep it quiet. Okay, so this is about the MIRA coalition. This is an organization that does okay. They have very different programs. They're really just a wonderful organization, and they're here to help immigrants. So I encourage you all to look at their website. There's a lot of resources. Really amazing organization if you haven't heard of them. Okay. So I'm going to go quickly through some of these, but basically there's been such scary information in the news. I think the government's goal is to scare everyone, and they are doing that very effectively. We'll talk about what has and hasn't changed, what you might be able to expect, what you might be worried about for yourselves, for your friends, for your family members. So within the immigration system, we have several different parts of the Department of Homeland Security. The first is ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So these are the police. These are the people who go out and arrest people, detain people, try to deport them. There's the government attorney that appears in immigration court. They're also from this agency as well. Customs and Border Protection, these are the people you meet at the airport. They also can go within 100 miles of the border, checkpoints, points of entry. So that's most of Massachusetts. They can go pretty much anywhere around here. And then finally, USCIS, Citizenship and Immigration Services. These are the people who actually will deal with an application that you file. These are all different parts of Homeland Security, but they all have to do with immigration. So we're really going to talk mostly about the immigration police. These are various ways that people might come into contact with the immigration police. The first one is if you get in criminal trouble, right? So anyone, regardless of their immigration status, can be detained if they commit a crime. And if you get in that system, then immigration often comes to look for you as well. Some people also, they go through that criminal system. Your case is dismissed. Your case is over. It's in the past. You don't think about it. And then you go to apply for citizenship. And guess what? That old case is still there. It's on your record. It never goes away. So sometimes people, get tripped up at that point when they go in to apply for something else, not realizing that their old criminal case is out there or their old removal order. Again, those things don't go away. They're always around. Green card holders usually are not in trouble with immigration enforcement because you have right to stay here. But if you do, again, commit a crime or you're returning from travel, they can take a look at you again. So if you've been away too long, if you have a crime and you left the US, those sorts of issues. Raids and targeted enforcement, I think this is what everyone's worried about right now, right? We haven't actually seen raids, but I think the government is intending to do some. We don't know when, where, how, but it could happen. And then other limited circumstances. I mean, unfortunately, right now, the ICE are being ordered to arrest as many people as they can. They have numbers that they're supposed to meet. And so, it could happen that you're just walking on the street and somebody comes to talk to you, or you're in your house and somebody knocks on the door. And we'll talk about all of those situations tonight. Okay. Reasons that somebody could get removed from the US or deported. Can you get him? Sorry. If you don't have lawful status, for example, if you came as a tourist or a student and your time ended and you're still here, you fell out of status, you crossed the border without a visa and you are still here. Those are reasons that the government would want to catch you and try to deport you. Criminal grounds, not all the crimes are important, but sometimes really minor crimes that seem like no big deal can be a big deal for immigration. And sometimes bigger deal crimes are not such a big deal for immigration. Any kind of drug conviction is usually an issue, even if it's something really minor, just a possession, domestic violence, violation of protection order, theft, fraud, even nonviolent kind of offenses. So there's a lot of things that can get you in trouble with immigration, even if your criminal case is over, done, you did everything you needed to do. Immigration violations or fraud. If you gave the government false information at any point, they really don't like that and they might try to come after you. Finally, any kind of security related grounds. If the government thinks that you've been involved in a gang or any sort of terrorist activity, they might come after you as well. Okay. So who is at risk? Anyone who is not a US citizen, if they fall under a ground such as criminal charges or if they have a prior order of deportation. And how do you know if you have a prior order of deportation? You might not know. So if you've been to court, you would probably know what happened in immigration court. But if you missed a court date, maybe you didn't know that you had to go to immigration court, you might have a deportation order against you. So people who are unauthorized, undocumented, people who have asylum or refugee status, these are generally people with status, so we don't worry so much about them. But still, if they have a criminal issue, it could be a problem. Permanent residents and non-immigrants, visitors, students. These are all people who are not U.S. citizens. Yeah, water. Okay. So the important thing is no matter who you are, if you encounter immigration officers, what do you need to do? So everybody living in the US, regardless of what your status is, whether you're a citizen, whether you have no status at all, you all have rights under the Constitution. And it's important to assert these rights and protect our basic rights. So I have some of these here for you tonight. Basically, this makes it easy for you so that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to say a word. If an officer comes to you, you can present this card that says, I don't want to talk to you. I would like to be silent. Okay, but you can't spill it. You're going to drink it? Okay, drink it up. So you can keep this with you. You can carry it in your wallet. And if an immigration officer comes, you can pull it out. Basically, what it says is, I am exercising my constitutional right to remain silent. I don't want to answer your questions. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want you to come in my house. I don't want you to search my belongings. And so these red cards, actually, the border czar, Tom Homan, who's this, he was a former head of ICE. Now he's being involved in immigration operations in a kind of less formal way. But he even said, these cards make it more difficult for us to arrest people. And that's really kind of what we want, right? You have the right to remain silent. You have the right not to give information about yourself. Y'all need to get out of there. Come out, please. Okay. So if immigration comes to your house, knock on the door, you look outside, you see, I don't know, 2 people, maybe a black truck, you don't know what's going on. You do not have to open the door unless the officer gives you a warrant that's signed by a judge. It can be pretty hard to tell what they're giving you, but usually the officers will not have this kind of warrants. So you can say, please tell us who you are. I want to know what agency you're from. What's your name? What's your ID? I want to see the badge. Show me who you are. You can ask for the warrant. We'll get to that. You can give them your red card, right? Slide it under the door. Say, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to see you. You do have the right to remain silent. You can ask the attorneys, you can ask the officers, can I call an attorney? Can I call somebody who's a friend? Basically, we want to prevent them from coming in your house, because if they come in your house, then they can look into everything and cause problems, right? So If you're asking them for a warrant, again, it can be difficult to tell what they have, but it needs to have your name, not someone else's name. Maybe they're looking for your neighbor. Maybe they're looking for the person who lived in this apartment 3 years ago, and it's not you. So then they can't enter. And it has to have a signature from a judge. So here we have a picture. It's kind of hard to see. The one that is on your left is the actual warrant signed by a judge. So it says search and seizure warrant. It has a signature at the bottom. It says U.S. District Court at the top. That one is actually, they can enter your house with that. The other one on the other side that says sample in red, that does not allow immigration to enter your home. This is, they're looking for something. They're looking for somebody to arrest them, but that does not allow them to enter your home without your permission. So again, can be difficult to tell, but keep an eye out for that if somebody does come to your home. Driver's licenses. You should be driving only with a full driver's license, not a permit. There's rules on what you can do if you have a permit. Honestly, if you are not a U.S. citizen, so I know that right now you can get a driver's license in Massachusetts even if you don't have immigration status. If there's somebody in your family who is a U.S. citizen and who does have a license, let that person drive, right? Because then if they get stopped, they just show their license. You don't have to say anything. In general, in Massachusetts, the officers should not be asking you about immigration status. They're really only going to be concerned about whether you can drive. So, you do have to show your license if you have one, if you're driving. You don't really have to answer questions about immigration. You don't have to tell them where you're from. You can show your red card if they did ask questions about that, right? Because it's really, really just your name and address and your ability to drive that should be important if you're driving. There are times where the police might think that you have been involved in a crime, right? Maybe you drive a white SUV and there was a bank robbery right next door and somebody was driving a white SUV and they think it's you and they stop you. They might want to look in your car. You can just say, I do not consent to the search, right? Please don't give them fake documents. Even if you don't have a real driver's license, even if you don't have a real ID, don't give them something that's fake. I would also say, please do not carry around your passport because your passport is what you use when you're going to get on a plane. If you have your passport with you, it will make it very easy for ICE to put you on a plane. Keep your passport at home in a safe place. Use other forms of ID. Again, you can get that state ID or the driver's license without having immigration status. Different rules do apply at immigration checkpoints and at ports of entry, right? So if you're coming in through the airport, you can't be like, I'm not going to show you my passport. It doesn't work that way. There's different rules there, but if you're just driving general streets within the US, you're not trying to cross a border, these rules should apply. Okay, if you're in public, you're walking down the street and two officers come up to you and they want to talk to you. Don't run away. Don't try to fight them. Just try to stay silent. Try to give them the minimal information. You don't have to tell them your name. You don't have to tell them where you're from, where you live. Just say, I want to remain silent. This is a great time to pull out that red card and say, I don't want to answer your questions. You don't have to be fingerprinted unless you're being arrested, right? So this one says if you have valid immigration documents and are over age 18, the law requires you to carry those documents. I think this basically means a green card, right? So if you do have a green card, carry it with you. That's a good idea. Don't carry your passport is my advice. Again, never provide false documents, no matter what. So one of the there's a few things under immigration law that are really serious, and one of them is a false claim to U.S. citizenship. So you do not want to tell them that you're a U.S. citizen if you're not. It's much better to say nothing than to lie and say, oh yeah, I'm a U.S. citizen, or give a false document. Okay. How to be prepared. So for some people, you might just not have status. And even if you talk to an immigration attorney, there might not be a way for you to get status. So it is important for you to be prepared, or if someone in your family doesn't have status, even if you are a U.S. citizen. So know your rights, memorize phone numbers because you might need to know them by heart and not get them out of your phone if you were in detention. And think of a U.S. citizen or green card holder who could pay your bond if you were detained, because you do need somebody with one of those statuses who can actually bring in the money and pay the bond. If you are arrested or detained, don't sign anything. Don't agree to voluntary departure unless you get to talk to an attorney. Don't rely on immigration officers. They are not attorneys. They are not looking out for your best interests. They have their own pressures that they are dealing with. So don't rely on what they say. If you have questions, do not call the USCIS customer service number. The people who staff that hotline are call center agents, right? They get a little bit of training and they get sent to work on this customer service hotline. They're not immigration officers. And if you call 3 different people, you might get 3 different answers. So please do not call the customer service hotline for answers. Again, you have the right to remain silent, call a lawyer, contact your consulate if you want to. If you're not afraid of returning to your country, you can contact your consulate and ask them for help. If a family member, friend, loved one is detained by immigration, there's a website, locator.ice.gov. I don't know why they didn't put that link. They just put this on-time detainee locator, but it's locator.ice.gov. That will help you find your loved one who has been detained. Oh, sure. Yeah, go for it. Thank you. Oh, awesome. Thank you. Okay. So, sometimes if you get detained, you can get released on bond. So again, the ICE agents are being ordered to arrest numbers of people. Those people don't all necessarily have a place to stay in detention, and some of them will get released. So you can ask sometimes under certain circumstances to have an immigration judge release you on bond. In this situation, it really helps to show all the good factors about you. How long have you been in the US? How many family members do you have here? Where do you work? You know, does your boss love you? All of those good things. Again, right now, I think the bond is payable online, but really you do need somebody who is a US citizen. They're saying lawful immigration status. I think it does need to be a green card holder, but somebody who is in good standing with the US government, that is the person who should be paying your bond. Okay. I am gonna cover this a little bit quickly because I want to save on time, but there are things you can do to think about your family if you are detained. If you have children, regardless of your immigration status, you have the rights to make decisions about them. You don't have to give the immigration officers information about your children, but if you're like a single parent or a primary caretaker, you would want to tell the immigration officers that, so maybe you could be released. Um, you want to think about your children's care, right? So who is going to take care of them? You can ask to call that person and make sure that they are able to take care of your children. Even if your children are in foster care, you still get the right to participate in those proceedings. Okay. There's these family preparedness packets. Again, these are available on MIRA's website. So you can go through this. It's like a 30-page packet. It shows you everything that you need to do. Basically, this is a plan about what would happen if you were deported or detained. Who's going to take care of your children? What are their special needs? How are those needs going to be met? What do you want for your children? Do you want them to follow you to your country if you had to be detained, or do you want them to stay here with someone else? So those are your plans. You get to make those decisions. It is wise to think about those ahead of time sometimes. Again, this is not for everybody, but if you are somebody who might be at risk of deportation, it's good to think about these in advance. So again, different things you can do. Make sure the school contacts are right. Make sure that your child is registered with your country's consulate. Make sure that your child has a passport. You could have a travel letter that allows them to travel with somebody who's not you. These are all things that you can do to prepare. So this is, again, like a range of things. Guardianship being the most strict and the most legal, giving somebody all the rights that you have. It is a court process. And then the informal process is just talking to people and saying, hey, you know, if anything happened to me, would you be able to step in? And then there's these kind of in-between options that you can do. Again, these should all be covered in the packet. It's available on the MIRA Coalition's website. I do encourage you to go check it out. All of your important documents, please keep them all in one place. Please keep all the pages. It's unfortunately often people come to me and they have nearly all the pages, but like the most critical page is missing, and it's so frustrating. So just please be sure, keep all of your immigration documents in the really safe place. I would encourage you, if possible, to have an electronic copy as well, so that if that paper copy is lost, you still do have an electronic copy. Dates, of course, hearings and immigration appointments, very important. Even if they've already happened, sometimes we have a deadline to do something within a certain time frame of a date. So knowing those dates are really useful. Okay. Public charge. Last time that Trump was president, this became a huge issue. And again, the purpose is to scare people. So the reality is a little different. We'll talk about what that is now. If your child is a US citizen, it doesn't matter what your status is. You can always apply for benefits for your child. It's based on income, so you do have to verify your income, but your own immigration status does not matter. You don't need to be a US citizen to get those benefits for your child, and there's no immigration consequences. The state agencies are not going to report you to ICE. Nobody's going to be paying attention to that. If your child needs those benefits, you should go ahead and get them. So again, public charge is really, really narrow. I think last time everybody was afraid to do anything with public benefits because they were just so worried. It really only applies for people who are applying for a green card, either through family or employment, or a visa to enter the United States. Doesn't apply to US citizens, doesn't matter if you're applying for citizenship, you're renewing your green card. If you have any of these other statuses, you have one refugee or asylum status, or you're trying to get it, none of those people are subject to public charge. So it's really a very narrow thing. Okay, as well, only two types of benefits are considered, which is cash assistance and long-term care at government expense. This is like if you became disabled and you really needed like institutional care. Most people who would be subject to public charge rules aren't even eligible for these benefits. So it's really, really very rare that it comes up. Also, I did want to mention unemployment is not a public benefit. Unemployment, every time you get paid, there's a little bit of your paycheck that's taken out and sent to the state unemployment fund. So if you do become unemployed and you need that unemployment assistance, it is a benefit that you got from having worked. It is not a public benefit that's provided out of the government's taxpayer money. It's you've already paid for it in another sense. So yeah, so you should always feel free. Again, sometimes you're not eligible for it. If you're not eligible to work in the US, then you usually aren't eligible for unemployment, but it will not harm your immigration status if you are allowed it to collect it. Okay, so again, cash benefits from work, unemployment is a big one, Social Security pensions, food programs, SNAP, WIC, school lunches, mass health, rental assistance, Section 8, emergency shelter, all of these things are not considered. And so there's a safe benefits. Again, this is on the Mira Coalition's website. It's very long, but I think if you go to their website, it's well organized. You should be able to find it. Again, most of the time, it's perfectly safe to get a public benefit. Could the rule change? Yeah, it could. But honestly, it's even the old rule was only applied to a small number of people. It wouldn't be immediate. And last time it was challenged in court, it would probably be challenged again in court. So, it's always a personal decision whether to take a benefit, but the chances that it would affect your immigration status, especially if you're not applying for a green card or a visa to enter the US, it's pretty small. Okay, where to get legal help? Please try to find either an attorney or an accredited representative. Immigration law is super, super complicated. And I'm not just saying this because I'm an immigration attorney, right? It's like getting medical care from somebody who's not a doctor. Do you want somebody who's just read stuff on the internet or maybe has been sick themselves, or do you want a doctor with medical training, right? People who are notarios, this is usually much more of an issue in the Spanish-speaking community. Those are not lawyers. Paralegals are not lawyers. They may be very knowledgeable about what they do, but they don't know everything. And like I said before, right? A lot of times people get into trouble if they have an old removal order or an old criminal case and they just go apply for something thinking, oh yeah, I can fill out a naturalization application. That's going to be fine. Filling out the form is not the hard part. Knowing whether you're eligible to submit that form and like what might happen after you submit it is the hard part. So interpreters, tax preparers, these people, again, they can fill out the form, but they shouldn't be telling you what to put in it. They shouldn't be telling you whether you're eligible for a certain thing. Really, their only role is just to interpret. So if you are looking for help, please try to find somebody with experience in this area. Unfortunately, we do see a lot of frauds, right? So people who found someone who said they could help them and then they paid a lot of money and it turns out they didn't file anything at all or they filed something that was totally fake and wrong. You can make a report. So there's these complaint forms and there's also a immigration court hotline that you can call. If you do have this situation, I'm sorry, like it is very stressful when you're already in this, immigration trouble and then you have to deal with this as well. But please do make a report because it's otherwise it's hard to stop these people. Okay. Legal resources. So there's these websites. Immigration court gives you a list of legal services. The city of Boston has free immigration consultations, I think every 2 weeks or at least twice a month. And you don't have to live within Boston. Sometimes they're even virtual. So you can do it by phone or by video. So you don't even have to go to Boston. Those are really great. And then there's also, legal resource finder. All of these are great. These will help you find an attorney. More resources. So you can just use this QR code. This goes to Mira's website. It should give you everything that you need. All the information should be there. Okay. So that was a lot of information. I ran through it very quickly. We are ready for questions. Again, I do encourage you, please do not ask a specific question about your personal circumstances. You can ask a general question. Please try to frame it in general terms so that we're not talking about anybody's particular life.
Jazakallah khairan, sister. Inshallah, we'll take one question from brother side and one from sister side if there is any. Who has any question? From sister sides, any questions?
Jazakallah khair, sister. I have just one question. So you stated that we have to carry as a green card holder, my green card holder. What about the U.S. citizens? Is the driving license enough, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because there's not a specific document that proves that you're a U.S. citizen that you would have to carry with you. Like you're not required to carry a passport or a naturalization certificate. So I would say the driver's license should be enough. Again, if the government wants to detain you or deport you, they have to prove that you're not a U.S. citizen. So, if it comes up, then hopefully, again, those documents are in a safe place. Somebody could bring your passport or your naturalization certificate and show it, and that would be enough. But I would say you don't have to carry those with you. But great question. Yeah, thank you.
Jazakallah khairan.
Thank you so much for making the time to come here and explain to us our rights and answer our questions as well. I appreciate your time. And we know, of course, if people have felonies and crimes when they are undocumented, so they're looking for those. What about is overstaying your visa or just not having a legal status in the US, and that in its own enough for deportation? Is it like?
That's a great question. So, our last several presidents have been very active at deporting people, right? So Obama and Biden, even though they were Democrats, they did a lot of deporting. It was very targeted at people who had committed crimes. And so, everybody else, the many, many people who are here without status, who are living and working for years and years and years, everybody was fine. But under President Trump the first time, and I think what we're seeing again this time, is that everyone without legal status could be a target. So yes, if you have overstayed your visa and you've never done anything wrong in your life and you've been paying taxes and you've been working and you own a home or a business, right? You could be at risk. And so it's really going back to the slide where we talked about like how you might come to the government's attention. Often it's criminal stuff, but it could be, a traffic accident that happens. And then you have to go to criminal court. And then at criminal court, they start asking questions and ICE is there, unfortunately. So for somebody who's overstayed their visa, we do recommend that you try to talk with an immigration attorney just to see if there is any option. And sometimes there's not. So if somebody, again, has overstayed a visa and does not have any status and is really not eligible for any status, I would be advising you to, try to lay low, live a calm life, don't get in trouble. But then also maybe do have in mind who might pay your bond if you were detained or who might take care of your children, right? Those are the things that we would be saying in that situation if you really have no status. But yeah.
Any other question?
Thank you so much. So, what's the longest period of time a green card holder can stay outside the US?
Great
And-
question. So, okay. Um, if you stay less than 6 months, usually no big deal. They will just let you come back in, right? So less than 6 months in one trip, that's fine. There's not a bright line rule. So between 6 months and 1 year, they start looking at you a little more carefully when you come back in. After 1 year, they're much more suspicious. They're like, what have you been doing? Because it's possible to abandon your green card, right? If you stay outside the US long enough, they would say you are no longer a permanent resident because you've abandoned your residence in the US. So we see this, again, if people stay away years and years, or sometimes people do this thing where they come back for like a week or two every 5 months or every like 5.5 months. And after a while, the officers at the border notice and they say, well, you're really kind of making visits to the US twice a year. You're not actually living here. What's going on? So, in general, we would encourage people to try to become US citizens if that's something you're interested in. So, you have to be here at least half the time for 5 years or 3 years if you're married to a US citizen. Otherwise, again, there's no hard and fast rule. There's times where people have been away for years and then we can still show that they didn't abandon their residence, but it gets murky. It's not so clear. Like it's not a rule that says, oh, if you've been away 2 years, you're gone. But yeah. Good
one
question.
more question. So,
Sure.
the people with the temporary protection status,
Yeah.
if they got a job and they're paying taxes, are they still being targeted?
So temporary protected status does protect you from deportation, right? So during the time you have TPS, you cannot be removed from the US. President Trump has made it pretty clear that he wants to end TPS. So, you know, it renews every 18 months. And usually the Secretary of Homeland Security looks at conditions in the country and they'll say, well, things are still kind of difficult. Like we don't want to send people back to El Salvador or Sudan or Yemen, whatever. Last time what we saw is that the Trump administration said, well, you know, things are actually fine in El Salvador and Haiti. Let's send people back. Like we don't want to have TPS anymore. It did get challenged in the courts, but I think it is pretty clear that President Trump does not want to renew those. So even though you're protected now, if somebody only has TPS with nothing else, we would encourage you to talk to an attorney to see if there's something else you could apply for.
Sister, I have a question.
Sure.
I mean, I know like maybe traveling internationally is not recommended if you are not like at stable status. How about like traveling inside the US using flights? Do you have any recommendation if you are like applying for green card or renewing your green card? If you can give information about that.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, this presentation was pretty general. I would actually like to mention travel ban because last time we had the travel ban, right? The Muslim ban. This time it didn't come back right away, but I did see it in an executive order. I think the Trump administration is laying the groundwork for another travel ban, and they're saying we're going to look at countries whose document systems or records are not good enough that we can actually do background checks. So I do think another travel ban is coming. I think it may be more expansive than last time. So and it's also hard to know exactly who would be affected until we see the text of the travel ban. So, I mean, travel internationally, it should be okay, especially if you have a green card. Like green card holders were not supposed to be affected by the travel ban last time. But if you don't have a green card, it's a little more tricky because if you're outside the US and then a travel ban happens, we don't know what would be like coming back. With regard to travel within the US, if you have a green card, even if it's being renewed, I think it's fine because you're not leaving the US. If you don't have any status, we have been hearing that they're putting CBP officers inside the US, like in kind of the domestic terminal, so that you might be encountered. But I think I don't know. It's hard to say exactly how much of a concern that is. I think if you need to travel within the US, even if you don't have status, I'm not sure that you would be, I don't know. Actually, I'm not really sure how to advise you in that situation. It's okay. Yeah. But good question. Thank you. Yes. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I do appreciate
course.
that. I have a lot of friends actually from Syria. Some of them they have TPS. The other have green card, asylum from that country. At the time of the regime was in Syria bad. Now they ask me if they can come, if they can go back to Syria, since the new system is changed. However, they have a green card, asylum. So as you know, the asylum has to come from the origin country to be asylum in here, right? And then now the regime changed due to the war, no more war. Thank God for that. Now they want to go back to the country to visit. Are they eligible to go before the citizenship?
This is a very tricky question.
It
So I
is.
think to be the most safe, we would always say, get your US citizenship before you go to that country. Because the reason is because asylum can be revoked for certain reasons if they decide that you know, the situation has changed so significantly that you're no longer at risk, or if you committed some fraud in getting your asylum, they could try to take it back.
Even
I mean-
even excuse me, even they have permanent resident, the green card,
Yeah,
but asylum,
right.
not as
I know. So they got the green card through
So
asylum.
is it tricky?
It is tricky. It's tricky. I think it's a risk, but how significant of a risk, it's hard to say. Like, I don't actually know. Because this is one of those things where you would probably do it and it would be fine. And you'd come back to the US and everything would be fine. And then maybe you go to apply for your citizenship and they're like, oh, you went back to your country. There's a really good article about this online, which kind of describes, like, kind of lays out the risks and like what could happen. Maybe it wouldn't happen, but it's hard to say. I mean, I think it is an individual decision. I wouldn't tell somebody, oh, yeah, you're perfectly safe. Like, go ahead. I would say there's a risk. Here it is. And it's your decision whether to take that risk. Because, I mean, yes, the government did change and I am very hopeful for things to be better. But right now, things are still a little unstable. So I don't know that we could say that somebody could go back to live there. Like maybe they could go back to visit, but thank you for that good question. It's a very thought-provoking question. I don't really have a firm answer for you, so I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair, barakallahu feek. If you were to be stopped by a police officer for driving violation, does he has a right to ask you for your immigration status?
So this is what actually people mean by sanctuary city or sanctuary state, sanctuary whatever designation. In Massachusetts, the police should not be acting as immigration officers. So the police are really just there to make sure you're doing everything right with driving. If you go to another state, it's different. So if you're driving, for example, in New Hampshire, they might ask you and they might be like, oh, we're going to call ICE and just run your name and birth date and see if they have any records on you and if they want to pick you up. And sure, we'll detain you and hand you over to ICE. So it depends on where you are in the country. So usually, again, in Massachusetts, they should not be asking you that. If you are in one of those locations, you could give them basically the red card and say, I don't want to answer questions about this. But what they do is basically they can take the information from your driver's license, which you are required to provide, and they can try to check it with ICE. They can call them.
Any questions?
I have a question. Can the government deport undocumented and bypassing the immigration court?
Okay, that's also a great question, and it wasn't really covered in this presentation. So the question, can the government deport an undocumented person bypassing the immigration court? The short answer is, if you have been here for less than 2 years continuously, they can do what's called expedited removal, which is a quick deportation process that you don't get to go through the full immigration court. So anyone who's been in immigration court can tell you it's not fast, right? It takes years and years to get through immigration court. Expedited removal, you really get to see like one immigration officer and they make a decision about your case and they can send you back very quickly. So yeah, for people who've been here less than 2 years, they can bypass the immigration court. Right now, that's anywhere in the country. It doesn't matter where you are. It used to be only within a certain distance of the border, but right now it is expanded to the whole country, pretty much. So yeah. Yeah. So in that situation, if you are caught and you've been here for less than 2 years and they're putting you in expedited removal, if you are afraid to return to your country for whatever reason, you need to say that as clearly as you can, because what you get in expedited removal is a credible fear interview. They'll interview you about whether you're afraid to return to your country and try to make a decision on that. So yeah.
Any question from sister side? Here.
Do you feel right now, is it a good time to do anything to apply or just stay low?
It depends on what it is. So I should also mention one other thing, which is ACLU of Massachusetts recently had a really great class action because last time under the Trump administration, if you got married to a US citizen and you went to your interview on that marriage petition, ICE was detaining people. And the ACLU sued them and said you shouldn't do that. And now, if you're in Massachusetts, you're married to a US citizen, you have a marriage petition pending, they are not allowed to detain you without a very good reason. Like they have to have like a criminal or national security reason to detain you. So for something like that, I would say, yes, that's great. Like, let's go ahead and apply. Now is a great time because it will protect you. If you are eligible for TPS and you haven't applied, like now would be a pretty good time because that can protect you. Other sorts of things, it would depend on how, I would say, like how strong your case is and how much risk you're comfortable with, right? So usually it's better to apply for things sooner rather than later. Some things like asylum have a deadline on them, or VAWA cases that are based on domestic violence, being married to a US citizen, or having a US citizen green card holder spouse or child who's abusing you. Those are very important. So you would want to try to do it sooner rather than later. Other things you might want to wait and see if it makes sense. So yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, sister, so much for coming and presenting to us. If a case that, been asylum for 12 years, this, and the case is still pending for 12 years, what's going on in that case, for example, if that person is not getting...
Yeah, that is tricky. So asylum does take forever. 12 years is a pretty especially long time for it to take. So I would say something is not right. Maybe, I mean, if it's in the immigration court, that the court sometimes does just take that long. If it's before the asylum office and it's been 12 years and nothing's happened, I would say go to an attorney and see if you can get that remedied. Because right now the asylum office, I was over there and they had a tour for us and they told us they were processing cases from, the oldest cases were from 2014. So that would be about 10 years. So if it's been 12 years and nothing's happened, I think it would be a good time to talk to an attorney. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just gonna take advantage, ask few questions.
That's
As
great.
I
Go
met,
for it.
I met a lot of people in this way. I can hopefully help. Allah, I don't want to forget. Can you please talk a bit about which cases qualify for a bond, and do you have an idea of how much are these fees? And that's one. And another question, which is maybe a bit different: are people who overstayed their visa or have a little bit just either that or they entered illegally let's say just if they overstay their visa, can they still apply, or that's already like a crime if they apply right now with this current atmosphere?
Okay, so with regard to the bond, the reasons can get pretty technical about when you're excuse me, sorry about this. I just want to make it a little quieter. Okay, here we go. So yes, it gets a little technical as to who's eligible for bond and who isn't. It kind of depends on which portion of the law the government is using to justify your detention. So it's hard to say in the abstract. I would say just talk to an immigration attorney if that happens to you, and you'll figure it out. Bond is either release on your own recognizance, which means you don't pay anything, you just get released. Maybe you have some conditions, you have to report for check-ins, whatever. Or if they impose a money bond, the minimum is 1,500 and there is no maximum. So it can go pretty high, especially for people with criminal convictions. And sorry, your second question was about basically like the timing of applying for things of asylum. If you overstayed, yes. Sure. So if you've overstayed your visa, basically what happens is that you fall out of status. You're no longer authorized to stay in the US. So you're here without authorization in violation of the law. It's not a crime per se, but it is an immigration violation. So that's why ICE might be interested in finding you. Depending, again, whether it's a good time to apply, I think it depends on what you're applying for, the strength of your claim, your reasons that you didn't apply before. Like there's kind of a lot of things that go into it. So that is why we would say, go talk to a lawyer because the details are so important in those things. But yeah. Mhm. Of course. Yeah. Thank you for these questions. They're very helpful. Yeah.
Jazakallah khairan, sister. I think that's was the last question. You told me you have those red cards.
I
Maybe
sure
I can
do.
pass some to brothers, sisters. And is it available online? Maybe they can find it on the same presentation.
For sure. So
So-
these are from the ILRC. I think they might be linked in the Miro website. If you want to check out that this QR code, you can try it. Oops, I think the QR code went away again, but that's okay. Wow. Perfect. Yeah. So then you can just check it and see, but I have them here in English. I have a few in French and I have a few in Arabic. I apologize that I don't have other languages, but they are available. So basically on one side, it's in English and it's what you give to the officer. I don't wish to speak with you. I don't want to let you search my house, anything like that. Then on the other side, it just tells you like what to do, right? So it's saying, if the officer comes, you can just give them this card. You don't have to speak. You don't have to do anything. Yeah. Mhm.
Jazakallah khairan, sister.
Yeah. Thank you all for your time as well. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Okay. And thank you for being patient. Let's go. Let's go now.